Never did I think that life could turn so abruptly, leaving behind nothing but the bitter residue of loss and betrayal. It all began on one spring evening when I, Tyler, met her at a mutual friend's party. Her name was Ashley, a name that, at first glance, seemed to embody tenderness and hope. In her eyes shone a genuine sincerity, and her gentle smile promised endless joy. I immediately felt that she was the one I had dreamed of my entire life. Our first conversations were filled with laughter, ease, and an undeniable chemistry, as if two souls, long waiting for each other, had finally sparked a connection. We strolled through the nighttime streets of the city, sharing our deepest dreams and planning a future filled with romance and adventure. As each day passed, what had begun as an acquaintance transformed into something much deeper. I recall one afternoon, sitting in a small, cozy cafe overlooking a busy street, as we discussed our childhood dreams and past experiences. Ashley spoke of the warmth of her family, of always believing in the power of love and loyalty. I, in turn, bared my soul to her, sharing my deepest fears and hopes, as if I were laying out everything I had ever hidden from the world. In her eyes, I saw true understanding, and in that moment, I believed our bond was not mere chance, but destiny written in the stars. Yet, as it turned out, even the brightest stars can eventually dim. Everything had started without any warning, but over time, the first subtle signs that something was wrong began to appear. Small delays to our meetings, light excuses, a fleeting uncertainty in her eyes. I initially attributed these to her busy schedule and personal concerns. Still, deep inside me, a shadow of doubt began to form, a quiet echo of unspeakable anxiety that I tried to drown out with love and trust. Sometimes, when we spent evenings together, watching old movies or strolling leisurely in the park, I caught myself noticing that her gaze seemed to wander far away, as if she were dreaming of something unattainable. I tried to convince myself that it was merely a trick of the imagination, a side effect of fatigue or memories of the past. But that uncertainty slowly took root in my heart. There were moments when a sudden chill would run through me, as her voice no longer carried the warm tone I had grown accustomed to. She began to avoid long talks about the future, and her interest in my plans and dreams grew increasingly superficial. Often we would sit in silence, and in that silence lay an unspoken truth, something she was hiding from me. I started noticing little details, strange phone calls, unfamiliar numbers, messages to which she responded evasively. At first, I tried to ignore these signs, convincing myself that everyone has a right to privacy, and that perhaps these were just random contacts, unrelated to our relationship. But the memories of her tender voice, her gentle touch, and her promises of everlasting love gradually lost their power to convince me. One evening, as rain drummed against the windows of our shared home, I accidentally saw a notification on her smartphone bearing a name completely unknown to me, Jessica. That word seemed to slice through my belief like a knife's edge. I felt my heart contract with pain, and in that moment, everything around me took on a strange, almost surreal hue. Memories of our first encounters, of laughter, tears of joy, and of believing in our future suddenly dissolved into a sea of doubt and suspicion. I tried to quiet the storm of thoughts by convincing myself it was just a coincidence, yet my intuition whispered that there was something far more significant behind it. The initial signs of betrayal began to spread in my mind like tiny cracks in a sturdy pane of glass, cracks that over time evolved into irreversible fissures. I scrutinized every nuance of her behavior, desperately seeking confirmation of my fears. In my dreams, I saw images of her with someone else, not lurking in the shadows but bathed in a dazzling, almost blinding light of deceit. This internal struggle, as I continually attempted to silence the voice of reason to preserve the fragile love that once uplifted me, slowly transformed into an unending torrent of pain and loneliness. I searched for explanations, asking myself questions to which there were no answers. How could I, Tyler, be so blind to what was unfolding right before my eyes? How could I have missed the signs that led me inexorably toward this tragic end? Every evening after she left, I found myself alone, immersed in thought, trying to piece together the fragments of what once seemed unbreakable. I re-examined our shared photographs, reread our messages, desperately hunting for any sign that our love had been genuine. Yet with every new detail, With every inconsistency in her stories, the pain deepened. I began to realize that the love I had so tenderly nurtured might have been nothing more than an illusion, crafted to conceal the darker aspects of her nature. And even though I clung to the hope for miracles and a second chance, deep inside I knew that betrayal was not a mere accident, but a harsh truth that could not be ignored. I sat in solitude, trying to gather the shards of my shattered heart and comprehend the pain that had become an inseparable part of my existence. In the stillness of night, I, Tyler, sought answers to the questions left unanswered by the betrayal, wondering how it was possible that everything I had believed to be true love turned out to be nothing but an illusion. It seemed that every sound, every whisper of the wind, reminded me of her presence, and at the same time signified that I could no longer trust anyone, not even myself. As I recalled the days when everything had seemed so promising, I could hardly believe that the flawless sparkle in her eyes and the warmth of her smile had now given way to coldness and deceit. Memories of her touch, when our hands had intertwined so tenderly, now felt distant, like echoes of a long-forgotten world where anything was possible. Every little detail that once brought me joy, her smile, her soft voice, a gentle caress, had transformed into a sting of pain and betrayal, like remnants of a forgotten dream that could never return to reality. I tried to find solace in conversations with friends, yet their words felt hollow, unable to quench the deep thirst for understanding and justice within me. One friend, Michael, attempted to explain that betrayal is not always the fault of one party, that relationships sometimes crumble on their own, like an old building succumbing to the pressures of time and circumstance. But I couldn't accept such explanations. How could one justify the deliberate concealment of the truth? How could someone so callously break the promises made in moments of tenderness and sincerity? In his eyes, I saw only regret, not the understanding that a love tainted by betrayal leaves behind not only pain, but an indelible scar that time can neither heal nor erase. Nights became especially tormenting. In the darkness, I sought answers to questions that seemed unspoken by anyone. Every minute of solitude was filled with memories of our endless cafe conversations, when we had dreamed together of a future filled with radiant moments. Now, those dreams seemed distant and unreal, like a mirage in a desert that vanishes upon approach. I spent countless hours sitting on the old couch that had once witnessed our joyous moments, desperately trying to reclaim even a fragment of that sincerity I had once felt, but instead, I was confronted only with the cold presence of deception. At times, I began to act as if betrayal were merely an inevitable part of life, that the wounds it leaves would eventually mend into nothing more than a faint scar on the soul. Yet deep inside, I knew that no passage of time could erase the pain, replace the lost trust, or restore the tenderness that had been stolen from me forever. I tried to distract myself with work, immersing myself in new tasks and encounters, but nothing could restore the wholeness that love had once bestowed upon me. Every time I thought I was beginning to heal, new details and fragments of conversations resurfaced, forcing me to relive that agonizing moment as if someone were replaying the most painful film of my life. In this endless battle with myself, I began to keep a journal, writing down all my thoughts and emotions. Letters addressed to Ashley became my way of releasing the accumulated pain, as if writing each word could ease the heavy burden that loomed over me. Every line in that diary was saturated with the bitterness of loss, a testament to the time when I had so blindly believed in words that turned out to be nothing more than sweet lies. I analyzed every little detail, every gesture, every word she spoke, searching for hidden meanings, warnings, a sign that all was not as it should be. But instead of clarity, only more questions and mysteries emerged, remaining forever beyond my grasp. Sometimes I was overwhelmed by an unbearable anger, not only directed at her, but also at myself. How could I have been so naive? How could I have allowed myself to believe that love was pure and selfless, when every manifestation of it already concealed the seed of betrayal? These thoughts tormented me to the very core, shattering what remained of my self-confidence, and causing me to doubt everything I had once held dear. In moments of extreme fury, I imagined confronting Ashley face to face, demanding answers, trying to understand where the game ended and reality began. Yet even in these fantasies, her once tender eyes now reflected only a cold indifference, as if she had long ceased to be the person I loved. Weeks passed, and still I could not shake the feeling that my life had been divided into two distinct parts, before and after the betrayal. Every morning I woke feeling as though only a shadow of my former self remained, as if the ordeal had not only robbed me of love, but had also stripped away my very identity. The sun streaming through the heavy curtains offered no solace, merely reminding me that a new day would come, regardless of my inner emptiness. I sought comfort in music and in the words of revered poets, trying to understand how one could move forward when the world seemed devoid of meaning. Yet even the melodies and verses felt distant and foreign, incapable of reaching the deep wounds that plagued me. Sometimes, as I sat on the porch of our former home, framed by autumn leaves, I found myself wondering how someone else could still hold space for trust and love while my own soul lay in ruins. How could it be that another person still had room in their heart when mine had been so utterly shattered? These thoughts, heavy as dark clouds, enveloped me, blurring my sense of time and space. Every step I took, every encounter with a stranger, reminded me that life continued to move forward, even as my own world had fallen apart. Returning home after such walks, I felt as though everything inside me was turning upside down. My mind overflowed with images of our shared past, the moments when we had dreamed of a future together, which now seemed so distant and unreal. Every room in the house recalled the love that once reigned there, now replaced by cold emptiness and solitude. I attempted to escape these memories by immersing myself in work, yet thoughts of the betrayal would always return, like an incessant refrain that I could not silence. In the end, only one question remained. How does one continue when everything that once seemed eternal has proven to be fleeting and deceptive? In this search for meaning, I understood that the only way forward was to accept my pain, to let go of the past and step by step try to find purpose in a new day. Perhaps one day, looking back, I would see that from the ashes of shattered dreams, something new, real, and unbreakable could arise. Several months passed, and I, Tyler, began to sense a gradual change overtaking me, as if the first rays of a new dawn were breaking through the horizon of dark days. Though the memories still pained me, and thoughts of Ashley's betrayal occasionally stirred up fierce anger and sorrow, with each new day, I noticed that those feelings, like fragile ice, were beginning to melt beneath the scorching sun of reality. One day, while wandering the narrow streets of my hometown, I realized that time relentlessly marches forward, even as my soul clung to old wounds. It was then that I decided it was time to stop hiding in the shadows of memories and to seek a path to healing. In those early weeks after that fateful discovery, when the name Jessica still echoed in my mind, I tried to distract myself from thoughts of the past. I spent sleepless nights reading books, working out, and attending yoga classes that promised inner harmony. Yet even amid these attempts to regain control, the shadow of loss would return, reminding me how easily trust could be shattered. There was a time when I even enrolled in counseling sessions, determined to navigate the labyrinth of my emotions and learn how to live anew. In those sessions, I recounted every detail of the betrayal, how every word from Ashley, once a sweet promise, had become a venomous truth. The psychologist gently explained that the root of my suffering lay not only in the pain of loss, but also in the fear of ever being betrayed again, a fear that kept me from opening up to new people and opportunities. These conversations served as a mirror, reflecting not only my vulnerabilities, but also the hidden strength that was gradually emerging through the cracks in my broken heart. I began noticing that even the smallest things that once seemed ordinary now carried a new meaning. Walks in the park, where the leaves rustled under a gentle breeze, reminded me that nature is capable of forgiveness and renewal despite all trials. On a park bench, where I had once dreamed of a bright future with Ashley, I encountered old acquaintances whose genuine smiles occasionally provided that essential glimmer of hope that helped me believe in a better tomorrow. Yet every such moment became a test, forcing me to balance between treasured memories and budding new hopes, between sorrow and the possibility of forgiving not only her, but also myself. Sometimes, as I returned home, I marveled at how much I had changed. The grief that once paralyzed every cell in my body was gradually giving way to reflective thought. I began documenting my feelings in a diary, and each new page became a testament to the internal struggle as I tried to discern where the past ended and a new life began. In those pages, I wrote not only about the pain of loss, but also about the importance of learning to let go. Initially, it seemed that Ashley's betrayal would leave an indelible mark forever. But gradually I began to understand that life is composed of many chapters, and no single event can define it. In these moments, I realized that my pain was not an enemy, but a teacher, one that, through suffering, showed me the importance of loving myself before I could love another. One rainy evening, as gray clouds blanketed the sky, I encountered a stranger named Emily on the street. Her gaze was filled with compassion and understanding, and in it I saw the sincerity I had thought lost long ago. We began talking, and every word she spoke offered me a chance to see the world from a new perspective. Emily shared how she, too, had weathered hard times, how she had struggled with the loss of trust and faith in love. Yet those very trials had made her stronger and taught her to cherish moments of genuine connection. Her words were not shallow platitudes meant to comfort me superficially. They resonated deeply, as if assuring me that perhaps my path to healing lay not solely in forgetting the pain, but in finding new meaning in every day. I listened intently, and in every phrase I heard support that helped me understand. Life goes on, and even if the past leaves scars, it does not dictate our future. Emily and I began to meet occasionally, and although I never allowed myself to completely forget what had happened, her presence brought a measure of calm and confidence into my life. I learned not to fight against my memories, but to accept them as part of who I am. A collection of chapters that cannot be erased, only built upon with new experiences. Our meetings were less about rekindling romance and more about honest conversations about life, about the importance of embracing and loving our emotions, no matter how bitter they may be. With every conversation, I realized that ahead of me lay not only the possibility of a new love, but also the chance to become wiser, stronger, and more forgiving of myself. Meanwhile, there were nights when I found myself gazing out the window, watching the cool rain wash away the traces of yesterday, as if promising cleansing and renewal. These moments of solitude no longer seemed catastrophic, but rather a necessary stage of inner transformation. I learned to let go not only of grudges, but also of the expectations that once tightened around my heart, preventing it from breathing freely. I often wondered if I would ever trust someone as completely as I had trusted Ashley, but each new encounter with life reassured me that healing is not a straight line, but a winding road full of surprises, leading eventually to inner peace. Over time, I reflected on how my perspective on life had changed. What once seemed like an unshakable truth now appeared in a new light, and I realized that betrayal is not a death sentence, but one of life's harsh lessons. A lesson that, painful as it is, teaches us that true strength lies in the capacity to forgive. Every morning, I made a silent promise to myself. Today, I will find the strength to carry on, to accept reality, and move forward. Though those words initially felt like empty comfort, they became the first steps on the long journey toward healing. Finally, on one of those cool evenings when dusk gently descended upon the city, I, Tyler, realized it was time to let go of the past completely and embrace a new purpose. Everything I had endured over the past months, the pain, the betrayal, the inner torment, and the endless search for solace, was gradually transforming into something else, something that allowed me to view my life from a new perspective. I understood that, despite the cruelty of loss, it was through that suffering that I had learned to appreciate the present, to feel my heart begin to beat in tune with a new rhythm of life. In that quiet, almost imperceptible sensation of change, I began seeking a path to inner freedom. During those days, I spent much time alone, wandering through familiar streets where every crack in the pavement and every glimmer of streetlight reminded me that life goes on, no matter what. I often found myself mentally returning to the beginnings, those moments when Ashley had seemed to embody light and her laughter had been the music of my world. But now I no longer tried to reclaim those lost illusions. I had learned to see them as lessons for which I was grateful. For they had shaped me, into who I am today. The pain of betrayal, which had once seemed insurmountable, gradually gave way to a profound forgiveness. Not so much forgiving her as forgiving myself for those moments of weakness when I let my feelings rule me. I recalled long nights spent in solitude, where each tear felt eternal and my thoughts wandered through a labyrinth with no hope. Now I understood that those moments had become stepping stones on the journey to rediscovering joy. I realized that I did not need to deny my pain, but rather accept it as an integral part of the path to self-discovery. With Emily, whose kindness and sincerity rekindled within me the desire to open my heart again, I began to construct a new reality. Our meetings were no longer about seeking rescue from pain. They became celebrations of being fully present. We shared our stories, laughed over our misfortunes, discussed dreams and plans, and I came to understand that life, like a river, washes away old resentments and brings forth new hope. Together, I learned to let go of the past and embrace gratitude for everything that had happened, for it had formed me into the person I was. I remembered how I used to stay up late, rereading the entries in my diary, where every line had been soaked in sorrow and longing. Now, those same pages served as reminders of the journey I had traveled, of every step that led me to finally feel joy again. The memories of that bitter betrayal no longer held dominion over my soul. They had become mere fragments of experience, pieces that, when assembled, gave me wholeness and wisdom. I realized that I no longer needed to allow the past to define my future, for a new and unknown future lay ahead. Every morning, I began with a quiet ritual. Upon waking, I would sit by the window and watch as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the clouds, as if promising a new life. Those moments became symbols of renewal, a reminder that even after the longest night, dawn always comes. I learned to cherish the small joys, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the smile of a stranger, the gentle rustle of leaves underfoot. All these little things gradually helped me find harmony as my inner wounds began to heal, making room for new, brighter experiences. Looking back, I saw in myself someone who had endured an emotional apocalypse, a person who, though it seemed they had lost everything, found the strength to rise and move forward. Every agonizing minute, every broken piece of my former self, became part of a story I could share to help others understand that even in the darkest moments, a spark of hope can be found if one dares to embrace vulnerability and change. I no longer saw myself as a victim of circumstances. I had become the architect of my own destiny, and that realization filled me with an incredible sense of freedom. Now, as I reflect upon the path I have traveled, a kaleidoscope of images comes to mind. The faces of people, the words, the moments that once seemed unbearably painful, but which have now transformed into priceless experience. I learned to see beauty in the cracks of my soul, for it is through these very fractures that light is allowed to enter. Every encounter, every farewell, left its mark. Yet these traces helped me understand that life is multifaceted and unpredictable. I began to value every moment, for only by doing so can one truly live, unafraid of change and open to every new morning as a gift. Saying goodbye to the past was neither sudden nor dramatic. It was quiet, like a distant echo of old events that gradually faded under the weight of time. In that moment, I realized that to truly love, one must first learn to love oneself. I found solace in art, in music, and in the words of poets who managed to capture the feelings that had long tormented me. Every note, every line of verse reminded me that art has the power to heal and unite souls, showing that even the deepest wounds can mend if we remain open to the world. At last, on one of those cool evenings when twilight softly descended upon the city, I felt a profound serenity. All the wounds, every crack in my heart, had become a part of me, a source of strength and a reminder that life is a never-ending journey where every loss makes space for something new. And so, with quiet faith in tomorrow, I took one last deep breath, accepting the past, letting it go, and opening my heart to a new love. A love that would be mature, thoughtful, and free of illusions. From that moment on, I began a new chapter in my life, where every word, every gesture, and every emotion reflected my inner transformation. The pain of betrayal, which once seemed insurmountable, gave way to wisdom and a quiet certainty that love can be not only a source of joy, but also a powerful catalyst for change. I, Tyler, no longer view my story as a tragedy, but as an invaluable experience that taught me to love, to forgive, and most importantly, to be true to myself. And although the road ahead remains long, I walk it with an open heart, knowing that behind every turn, behind every new dawn, lies the possibility of renewal, a promise of true happiness that I am now ready to embrace without fear, cherishing every moment of life as the gift it truly is.